Welcome back, friends, to United Taste of America. I'm your host and captain, Rick K. Jones, and I'm delighted that you're with us today. Today, we find ourselves in the 31st state of the union, the Golden State, California. Folks, we probably need a dozen podcasts to tell the story of California. I mean, that's how much stuff has happened in California historically. But let's jump right in to do a little abridged version of it today. California has a fascinating history, Native Americans, and then the Spanish came. And the Spanish came largely with missionaries, friars that built a series of missions throughout California to try to both educate and convert the Native Americans. That area was called New Spain, as was all of Mexico, until the Mexican Revolution for independence in 1821. And then California became part of Mexico. In the early 1830s, Russians came to California, and they built a settlement in an area in Northern California that we now know as the Russian River. And the Russian River grows some great, what we call old vines infidels there. But the Russians came there in 1830 and built a fort and a settlement, which they later abandoned. Then in 1848, two things happened simultaneously. We had won the Mexican-American War, and so we were given California as part of the settlement, the territory of California. And then what else happened in 1848? They discovered gold at Sutter's Mill outside of Sacramento. And then we had the rush, the gold rush. We called them 49ers because they came in 1849. And so many of them came in 1849 that by 1850, it was large enough to become our 31st state. The major city in California in that era was San Francisco. Why? Big harbor. You could arrive by ship, as many people did. And then they had the famous earthquake in 1906 that the whole town almost burned down. And they had to restart all of San Francisco from that standpoint. During the Depression, we call that the Dust Bowl. It was the farmland was basically no rain, became dust. And so many migrants came from areas of the Midwest, primarily from Oklahoma. They called them Okies. And they traveled en masse by the thousands, what we call the Mother Road, Route 66, from Oklahoma, and settled kind of in the Bakersfield, Fresno area of California. And there's a classic John Steinbeck book about that period and those people called The Grapes of Wrath. But what really led to the explosion of the population in California was the Second World War. And the reason is all the troops came by train to California before they were put on ships to go fight in the Pacific Theater. And when many of them came back from the war and, came back to California, they said, I'm not going back to Brooklyn. I'm not going back to the Midwest. I'm staying here in California, because it was really the age of opportunity in the state. And it led to just a huge population boom. Today, California is the home of the motion picture industry. They have a lot of major military installations there. They still have oil refineries, but they're also known for being kind of the breadbasket of so many fruits and vegetables that are grown in the central valleys throughout California. And they have largely been dependent, over the years, migrant workers. So many workers have come from Mexico to pick the crops and to work in the fields. And they have a very, very, very large Mexican-American population and a large Asian population in California. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the foods. Our musical playlist, boy, we could have picked 100 songs about California, but we picked 5. The first one is the classic Hotel California by the Eagles. The second one is by a group called America, called Ventura Highway. A few years ago in our Shaboom podcast, we talked a lot about America. They were a group of they were a small band at a American school in London. Their dads were in the Air Force, and they formed this band called America in England as high school seniors, and then recorded a classic song, Horse with No Name. Ventura Highway is the highway that leads up to up the coast from Los Angeles. And wonderful song. The Beach Boys, synonymous with California, the classic California Girls. Tony Bennett's classic, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. And finally, the Mamas and the Papas classic song, California Dreamin'. There are so many terrific and diverse dishes from California. Let's start with the wine industry. I mean, the wine industry in America was largely driven by California, and it was largely driven by the Italian immigrants that came there at the turn of the last century. Remember, we've talked repeatedly about how many Southern Italians immigrated between 1880 and 1930. Well, a bunch ended up in California because the land looked so similar to the land they had left in Italy. And two very famous families, the Mondavi family and the Gallo family, built tremendous wine empires that led to the explosion of wine in Napa, Sonoma, Temecula, other places throughout the state of California. So many of the dishes were brought by immigrants. They have a large Basque population, the Spanish, northern Spain Basque that came, and they brought a particular cut of meat called the tri-tip that you don't find tri-tip. It's delicious, and you don't find it many other places, but you do find it in Basque areas of California. The Portuguese brought their famous chiapino seafood dish. Really, it's a seafood stew, whatever they caught, whatever they had left over, they made a stew. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Mexicans have brought dozens of dishes to California, but they're mostly famous for their burritos with flour tortillas. Koreans, the famous Korean tacos that you find in California and that have spread across the country. Sushi originated in Japan, migrated to California, then to the rest of the country. Lots of great sushi restaurants in California. And there's a huge Chinese population, primarily in the San Francisco and Los Angeles areas. Chop suey, chow mein, so many great classic Chinese dishes. Some very famous dishes were actually invented or created in California. When you were a gold miner and you struck it rich with some gold, your go-to dish was a thing called a hangtown fry. This is scrambled eggs with oysters. You don't find it many places, but you find it throughout California. It's a wonderful dish. The French dip, shaved beef dipped in au jus on a French roll. Where did they invent it? Philippe's in Los Angeles. I've been to Philippe's. Great place to get a French dip sandwich. The Green Goddess dressing and turkey tetrazzini were both invented at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco. The famous Brown Derby in Los Angeles created the Cobb salad. And the Mai Tai drink was created at the famous Trader Vic's in Los Angeles. Seafood everywhere, all up and down the coast. They're very famous for grilled oysters, and one of the best places to get big, great grilled oysters is at the Bodega Bay Oyster Company at Bodega Bay. Now, you may say, where's Bodega Bay? It's just north of San Francisco, and it's the spot where they filmed the classic Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Birds. So Bodega Bay was where they filmed that classic horror movie. Then you have what we call California cuisine. And it was really led by a chef by the name of Alice Waters. Alice Waters had a restaurant, a farm to table. Before you knew about farm to table, she almost invented farm to table menus at a place called Chez Panisse in Berkeley, and really created what we call California cuisine. And probably the best example of that is avocado toast, which originated there in California and has spread across the country and around the world. But there's one really unique, iconic dish that you find in California, and it's the fish taco. Remember, California, including the Baja, was all one territory. The Baja was part of the territory when Mexico controlled it. And so that coastal feel that you get at the Baja in Mexico today is, made the leap across the border into California. And uniquely, the fish taco, and you can get fish tacos now pretty much everywhere, but they really originated in San Diego, California, at a place called Rubio's. So there was a native to San Diego, a guy named Ralph Rubio. He was a student at San Diego State University. He did what every, student of that era did. He went on spring break. And in his case, he went to Baja and he discovered fish tacos, and he discovered this great recipe for a fish taco. Comes back to San Diego and he opens a little stand in 1983 on Mission Bay in San Diego. Well, folks, 270 million fish tacos later, Rubio's has a series of restaurants throughout California and a few other states. And it's really this kind of classic Baja road food, road stand, beach, surf culture cuisine that's there. It creates a vibe. It's an attitude. It really is kind of summed up by surfer dudes that, surf all day and they're starving and they want something they can grab in their hand and eat very fast, and then get back to surfing again. And that's the Baja fish taco. At Rubio's, they make them anywhere you want them. They can customize them. They make all these homemade sauces, about a dozen different kinds of sauces that you can have. And they do, all kinds of different fish, shrimp, tacos there at Rubio's. Interesting, they were early on really concerned about environmental issues. And that's kind of California, but they want to protect the coastline and they want to make sure that they are basically using fish that reproduce very easily. And we'll talk about that in a minute, about the kind of fish that they use at Rubio's. So I go there and I spend the day at the original Rubio's location there on Mission Bay. And I had a chance to meet with a guy named Justin Mazel, who is the executive director of all things culinary there. He comes up with the new dishes and the things that they want to do. Ralph Rubio sold the company, but he's still engaged, still involved in his late 70s. But Justin is a native San Diegan who kind of came through the ranks, started in the kitchen and has worked his way up to the top. And we had a great time with Ralph that day, talking about, with Justin, talking about Ralph's legacy and his vision and how he did things. And what I love is they make everything from scratch, everything. And so while it is now a chain restaurant, they're doing it with the same recipes and the same fresh ingredients and all that. Okay, I'm a traditionalist. I like their original fish taco. It is a beer battered and fried Alaskan pollock. Alaskan pollock, they reproduce in mass quantities, so we're not going to run out of pollock. So it's not an endangered species. And they serve it on a freshly made corn tortilla. That's important. Fish tacos are on corn tortillas, not flour tortillas. And they chop up a little cabbage, and they have a secret sauce that goes on it, and it's really good. Now, you can get grilled mahi, dolphin, tacos if you want. Again, I mentioned you can get shrimp tacos, other things, but I like the original one there. It's a great, great dish. Wow, how do I limit the great other restaurants of California to just 3? Well, that's impossible, but I have to do the impossible today. So here's my 3 from me. We've already mentioned a bunch of places, like Philippe's and other places, but here are 3 different ones we haven't talked about. One of my favorite restaurants in California is in Napa. It's called Mustard's Grill. It's been there for a long, long time, sits in a vineyard, and it's classic California cuisine. They have a wood oven, and they grill seafood, they grill vegetables, they grill amazing meats, steaks, all kinds of stuff. They make the best onion rings. In this case, they're strings that I've ever had anywhere. I mean, I just go there and eat onion strings. They're just so good. The other part is they have a wine list of wines you can't buy anywhere because they're small batch wines grown right there in Napa. So the menu's a reasonable size menu. The wine list is ridiculous. I mean, it's just so big with so many great wines. Mustard's Grill never fails, Napa, California. The second place is a place in San Francisco called a Tadish Grill. It's one of my favorite restaurants in the entire world. It was founded in 1849 by Croatian immigrants, and then John Tadish bought the restaurant in 1871. Okay, what do you eat there? You want to start with sand dabs. Sand dabs are small little fish, kind of like a flounder, a little more flavor, lightly battered, lightly fried in butter. Great way to start. Then you're going to want a bowl of cioppino. They make cioppino, this fish stew, tomato based. It's as good as anything. Now, my wife Charlotte loves their Louis salads. They make a Louis dressing for either a shrimp salad or a Dungeness crab salad. Or if you're smart, you get both crab and Dungeness crab Louis. Again, folks, the Tadish Grill, downtown San Francisco, one of the world's best restaurants. And then there's a classic roadside stand in the middle of Pico Avenue in Los Angeles. It's called the Apple Pan. When you look at our video vignette on California, we filmed part of it at the original McDonald's in San Bernardino, where the McDonald's brothers had their original restaurant, and we filmed there. So California's always been about hamburgers. Apple Pan, some of the best hamburgers you'll ever have. Counters, just burgers and fries. Why do they call it Apple Pan? Because they have amazing apple pie for dessert. The burgers are just so good. It's very, very old school. They serve your French fries in a paper cone that sticks in a kind of a stand-up thing that folks, the Apple Pan in Los Angeles. So you got Tadish Grill, Apple Pan, and Mustard's Grill in Napa are my three. From me, that was a lot to talk about with California. It's an amazing state. I think you will love the famous fresh fish Baja tacos from Rubio's. And we'll see you back here next week from a state with a very large Scandinavian population. That's Minnesota on United Taste of America.